This is History of the American Presidents, slightly abridged.
Chapter 1. Founding Fathers, or Those Crazy Colonists. If we are to be truly honest, any history of American presidents should start with John Hanson, who was president under the Articles of Confederation. But, since no one particularly likes this form of government, he unfortunately gets the axe every time. So like most history books, we start with Washington. Universally liked and unanimously elected, Washington was a man of little words, with the shortest inauguration speech of 133 for exact, and meaningful action, having single-handedly put down the Whiskey Rebellion. Following was Adams, who basically spent his presidency hating Jefferson, and anyone else who got in his path. Jefferson, however, spent his presidency utterly confused. A staunch anti-federalist, he consolidated the government and doubled the size of the country, when he wasn't rewriting the Bible or sleeping with Sally Hemings, his slave/mistress/half-sister-in-law. Madison spent his presidency like a bullied middle schooler, and Monroe declared no trespassing. Quincy Adams, much like his father, spent his presidency hating Jackson, who in turn spent his presidency hating the Indians when not in one of those 100-plus duels defending his wife's honor. Van Buren got saddled with Jackson's depression, who just shrugged his shoulders and was quickly voted out. Harrison had plenty to say, but was a victim of, wrong place, wrong time. After giving a 40-minute inauguration speech in a downpour, he died 1 month later, having accomplished absolutely nothing. Tyler then moved in and declared himself president, much to most chagrin, and then himself did nothing. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. The Expansionists, or Shoot First, Ask Questions Later. Polk managed to part half of Oregon Territory from the British, and single-handedly enraged Mexico by stealing both Texas and California, declaring war as he did so. Needless to say, he wasn't very popular. Taylor, the hero of Polk's previous war, tried to end slavery, but died from one intense stomachache. Fillmore wandered in and with one signature completely undid everything Taylor lived for. Pierce took what Fillmore did a step further with the Fugitive Slave Acts and the Kansas-Nebraska Acts, letting Buchanan seal the deal on slavery, which he did. Buchanan had Dred Scott, and Lincoln was handed a divided country and a suffering people. Lincoln brought the country back together, freed the slaves, and invented a toy before developing a large distaste for the theater. Johnson was then thrust into the limelight and did everything in his power to prevent the 15th Amendment, and was promptly impeached. Grant undid everything Johnson did, in between smoking about 20 cigars a day and reliving 4 battles on the White House lawn. Hayes was a terrible racist, who was followed by Garfield, who only lived long enough to make the first phone call. Arthur had the Pendleton Axe, but was a little bit of a flashy dresser, so no one really truly cared. Cleveland didn't take no for an answer and split his turn. After setting up a gold standard, Harrison couldn't tell the difference between silver and gold, and Cleveland had to come back and clean up his mess. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Depression Era, or Money, Money, Who Has the Money. McKinley was obsessed with Cuba and hated Spain. So while in office, he managed to add Puerto Rico, Philippines, Guantanamo, and Guam to the ever-growing U.S. alphabet game. Anarchists, however, allowed Toys R Us to add a whole new aisle, and in walked Teddy. Theodore Roosevelt cleaned up the food, passed out labor stickers, saved the national parks, doubled the military, and messed around in Panama for a while. Teddy then turned to Taft and yelled tag before smacking him into office. Taft sulked and then proceeded to get stuck in the White House tub, all of which he blamed on Theodore. Wilson came in and gave us the State of the Union, and then proceeded to cancel favorite TV shows nationwide. After that, Wilson took us into World War I, and then back out again. Harding had no idea what he was doing as president, so instead he became a notorious skirt chaser with a penchant for broom closets and Secret Service wife distraction tactics. Coolidge cleaned up Harding's mess, but was blamed for the Depression. This also may be part from the numerous occasions of him hiding from his staff to make sure they were still working. Hoover followed, and notoriously paranoid, had no idea how to fix Coolidge's economy, and would only discuss it with his wife, in Chinese, when he made sure no one was in the room. Franklin Delano Roosevelt took us into World War II and gave us a New Deal that outlasted 4 terms, Hitler, Pearl Harbor, socialists, and turned America into a lean, mean fighting machine before dying in office. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Modern Times, or what is in that briefcase, anyway. Truman dropped the A-bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ending the Second World War and then declaring communism not fit for the world, let alone all the tea in China. Eisenhower, the World War I and World War II battle axe, decided that a draw in Korea really wasn't that bad after all. Kennedy stood his ground when it came to Cuba because, really honestly, they would interfere with his plans of space domination. Johnson unfortunately had to step in without having memorized his part, and while he did end segregation, he poorly mishandled Vietnam. Probably due to the fact that he had a special buzzer for when his wife was coming to the Oval Office. Nixon ended Vietnam and was the first president to visit China, but between a Watergate scandal and faulty tape recorders, he quit and spawned parodies the world over. Ford stepped in, and stepped up, and then tripped down.
Carter saved energy and patched up America's trust after the Watergate scandal.
And Reagan decided he wanted a Death Star and tried to use the force on the Soviet Union. Bush Sr. had the Gulf War, and then proceeded to add a new word to the Japanese language one night after poor seafood. Clinton, however, jazzed his way into American hearts, and despite giving America the best economy it had seen in a long while, he will almost always be remembered as an example of don't kiss and tell. Bush Jr. started a war on terror to heal a grieving nation, but in the process invented a whole new definition of English grammar. And finally we come to Obama, whose Yes We Can gave hope and flooded status updates, Twitter feeds, bumper stickers, windows, posters, t-shirts, and more. With the election coming up, who knows who will be added to the next history of presidents.
This has been History of the American Presidents, slightly abridged.